I was just treated to the spectacle of Malala, the Nobel Prize winning advocate from Pakistan for women's education, um, urged Israel not to bomb any more hospitals. Now, nobody who saw it thought, oh, well, Joey Biden is going to go to Israel tomorrow and tell them, I've decided not to give you $100 billion in arms, boondoggle, because Malala didn't like she pulled a weepy over the All Poors who were bombed in the hospital. You see, but the media control tower immediately broadcast into my face that nobody, that's what they broadcast in my face and my Twitter, nobody holds forth that there is no justification for mutilating a deaf kid who has a temper tantrum in his room and writes a letter describing his rejection by Israeli. It was widely construed as a threat. And we've learned since that the hysteria was being caused by a nerve agent that her partner, Wattenmaker, in prison psychiatry, poisoned me with. That's proven. Nobody at the UN cares. Nobody at the UN. Nobody cares. We all agree that the etiquette of dating was crossed. Okay. This is and they want, the madhouse to replay how frightened that made me, because they were using that storyline and continue to use that storyline to cover up the evidence that AIDS was man-made. I'll show you some of the issues involved in the fact that it proves AIDS man-made. The poison was used by prison authority on a child who was battered and forced to ingest it. They even spelled ingest, N-J-E-S-T, and referred to nearly killing me. So, the victim is to blame that they were poisoned. That's a paradigm. It was, the Israeli's name was Gail Carolyn, like Christmas Carolyn, bombs bursting. Gail Carolyn Burston, which is a nom de guerre. Anybody can see it's a homophone for Christian Armageddonism. Anybody can see that. I had an unopened letter. I explained and showed the very dramatic evidence that they used me in a war game. More evidence came out later about the nature of the war game. An AIDS testing war game was proven, in fact, to have been a two virgins pussy ball war game. That was also proven. But I showed this evidence in the context of finding the letters by Gail Carolyn Burson. I had an unopened envelope. I went to the police. I went to the university administration. I went to the courthouse. I went to court. I went to the district attorney. I went to my peers. And finally, I went to a student newspaper office in front of witnesses, and I opened it. I had hoped I could get a jury and present it as a closing argument to the jury. It was sealed envelope from 1975. When we opened it, it read, "This is mascara or black blood." Now I'm a poet. That clarifies what the whole thing, the whole horror from Israel has been. Now the UN endorses this. Al Gore comes and says, we were protecting the ozone by hiring a hooker to make a laughing stock of the little queer ball whose brains we beat in, and the Israelis dragged through glass. They were laughing. to promote Greta Thunberg and so on. And she's never said anything about any of it. She sits in the background and votes. Nobody cares. Bing. Monbiot thinks you're going to ask me for my email. And then we'll see. Toya Wilcox had to call up somebody from Australia. She was chewing the carpet. She was ravaging the carpet. I must have Queerball intoning something um, unwanted of Greta. I must have Queerball. I must have Queerball intoning something unwanted of Greta. And she was ravaging the carpet. And he said, call the Australian comedians. And the Australian comedians came out and said, wow, Greta is now old enough that I can fornicate her. Literally, this was on TV. And Toya Wilcox managed to calm down. And they hustled out the carpet to Monbiot, who collects things like that. And then they came back and said, has Queerball said anything unwanted of Greta Thunberg? And it hadn't happened. So they put police peep on my computer. Do any of those girls look like Greta Thunberg? Do any of those girls look like Greta Thunberg? None of them do. And Toya Wilcox sits there ranting and screaming. And they have to roll up and hide the carpets from her. Now, what happened to Shannon Harps was that Mount Desert Island was established to have been a premeditated AIDS testing war game by the people who released AIDS. But the NAACP said those are our licky chops because we designed the sacred, brilliant, fundamentalist pussy ball operation that Queerball was ensnared in. So them's our licky chops divvies. And they ripper murdered Shannon Harps, the Green Party, the insane coven of stern Masons in Pennsylvania over a penny because Paul McCartney called dibs on the penny. You see, that's a storyline that all will relate to because John Lennon is the star. And the evidence shows that John Lennon was in on it. He pulled a Houdini, so that makes it worth all the more money. And they want the money. Well, after they ripper murdered Shannon Harps, they still couldn't convince. They had told everybody I was a troublemaker and wouldn't be able to finish school. That nothing I said makes sense. That nobody believes Queerball. So, they poisoned me, they castrated me, they gave me Parkinson's, and I crawled back to school. What happened? I made Phi Theta Kappa. I rose to the top of my class. I didn't interfere with the student activities. I attended regularly. I attended more often than most of my teachers. And I got A after A after A, straight A's. Made honors. Even managed to pass Japanese with a B. I'm deaf. Okay. So, the curse was foiled again crowd had to huddle. And they said, well, he wrote a poem called Shirilla Princess. And there's this girl who's really cool named Shirilla. And she's susceptible, and her name is Mackenzie. That's all the more important because they said that the Mackenzie principle in the storybook of Jimmy Queerball proves that Jimmy Queerball was by necessity poisoned by the prison system, that it's justified. And Malala goes to the people who did it and says, I urge you not to do that, right? That's what Pittsburgh Post Gazette had set up too. The woman who introduced me to Gail Burstyn was a magistrate in Pittsburgh. See, so you have to go to the magistrate who introduced you to Gilbert and say, I'm not a threat. You didn't have any right to poison me. She goes, call BB Netanyahu and we'll see what's what. Okay, so that's the situation with these goblins, like Penis Gabriel's totally involved. I mean, Amanda Harcourt just called up the wad makers and said, yeah, remember when Queerbait was under hypnosis? We're going to do it to this other girl, and it's a car bomb. We're going to get her to wreck her car under neurohypnosis using this chemistry that was designed by Pitt News, put on the cover of the newspaper when they were mocking me, neurohypnosis. They knew that they were experimenting with neurohypnosis. They brought in a state trooper from Ohio to justify torturing and poisoning, kidnapping, and using for brutal adult pedophilia a child in the Pittsburgh public schools with an essay that this trooper from Ohio wrote called Pacifism is Immoral. In other words, it's not immoral for a psychiatric doctor in neurochemistry using hypnosis to brutally poison with a nerve agent a child. That's not immoral. What's immoral is the child didn't fight to the death to prevent itself from being poisoned. It was too busy listening to that communist Jimi Hendrix while Peter Gabriel and Robert Fripp were laughing and slapping five at Yoko Ono's revenge war room. That's the reality of the situation, that you cannot get it through your head. And Paul McCartney knows perfectly well that you can't make sense of what he's done. He has a heads I win, tails you lose system going with this business about London. We don't like queerball. Nobody believes queerball. Nobody believes queerball. The UN come out. Dating etiquette was wrecked. Dating etiquette was violated because he whimpered as a pee-wee, quee-wee. And what did you want to do, pee-wee, quee-wee? Didn't you want to put in Putin? Didn't you want to Putin? They had the whole thing hotwired through the international fundamentalist psychopaths. This is meanwhile while they're sending people to rock concerts where they're selling T-shirts that say sex, drugs, and rock and roll, while they're positioning the rave for the paratroopers to come in and blast them. Mackenzie Shirilla was given bad drugs by an experimental unit of the tri-state area, hoping she would self-destruct, and she did. And what that allows them to say is, well, that shows you why we had to slash and murder Shannon Hart, because Queerball was lying when he said that the chemicals weren't going to do the self-destruct job to him, and he wasn't going to hurt anybody, and he wasn't himself threatening Leslie Katz. And somehow a few people wondered, what does poisoning a deaf kid and torturing a deaf kid and ripper murdering Shannon Harps and raping Jeannie and lying about a person who's a scholar in school prove about virginity being rape? I mean, a couple people saw the effete madness of King Crimson at work and said, could it be that these people are just liars? They've been ripping off the museum, for God's sakes. They stole $6 million in Bibles and shit from the museum. They staged a reckless car drive incident and said I was the driver when I quit the job in outrage over it. They said everything. There is no lie too low for Peter Gabriel. Not one single lie can be told that is too low for Bibi Netanyahu. They bombed the hospital and then said, oh, the victims did it to themselves. And Biden wants to give them $100 million tomorrow. Okay? Psychos behind it are not out to save the earth. They didn't care. They're part of the fossil fuel industries. We don't give a crap. That's what they all are. They're all full of, we didn't care. We didn't care. We didn't care, so we need a scapegoat. So they said, well, these people who realize that it's the prancing, effete, English touchiness of Robert Fripp at work. It has nothing to do with Jimmy Curry. Jimmy Curry is just a deaf kid who is awkward. Said, I'm not so sure this is the way we should be interpreting it too loudly. So they sent in a death squad and went shopping, and they found Mackenzie Shirilla. And they boom Mackenzie Shirilla. And they said, tell us now, dog eyes, how safe it is for people to cross Roger Waters. When he told you to take LSD, you're going to be on the outs if you don't, because we want our victims to pay for it themselves. And everybody who has any grasp of English understands it's heads I win, tails you lose. Authority from the British royalty poisoning people and then saying they're to blame and getting them to cheer. But you all love it, don't you? Is what Zappa used to say after insulting people. He would insult them behind his loud guitar. Ruthless, vicious things he would say about his audience, and then he'd stop. But you all love it, don't you?